Today's lesson is going to give you a little bit of feedback on your essay plans on the Iago and Roderigo exchange, which I want to go through just before I get you to write one of your paragraphs. So it's really important. If you haven't written that essay plan, you won't be able to complete this lesson. So you need to go back to lesson 10 where I set out the task and look through lesson 11 as well, where I give you help on this before coming to this lesson. Okay, so quick reminder then, the title of the task was looking at that passage, that Iago and Roderigo exchange in Act 1, Scene 3, lines 309 to 373. The question is always the same: explore the significance of this extract in relation to the tragedy of the play as a whole. Remember to include in your answer relevant analysis of Shakespeare's dramatic methods. I'll read the bold for you again, which tells us what happens in that exchange. When everyone else has left, Iago reassures Roderigo that Desdemona will soon tire of her husband and then will fall for Roderigo's advances as long as he keeps giving money to her via Iago. If you want to watch my video of the annotation again, I've left it as the last slide on today's PowerPoint if you want to look at that before writing. Okay, again, if you just want to refresh quickly, you might watch it again on the National Theatre website. There's the login details once more, and it's 25 minutes 50 to 28 minutes 40, so nice and short if you did want to do that. Okay, so here then I'd like you to pause the video, get your plan out, and decide which is your best paragraph. So do that now. And then before you write it, I want to just go through a couple of tips. So firstly, a little note on AO5 then. I noticed in your plans that some of you are still struggling a bit with this. The key here is just to make it really specific. So not just saying something like Iago's poor treatment of Roderigo links to the tragedy because he will cause Othello's downfall too, but something a bit narrower, like Iago's use of the emasculating terms silly and be a man demonstrate his condescending disrespect for Roderigo. He shows his ability to use others, in this case Roderigo, to carry through his malevolent plan to destroy Othello. Few little reminders on stylistic tips. Quotations. Introduce these properly with a colon or a comma before the quotation marks, unless the quotations are embedded in your sentence. Theme. Writers don't use a theme. Readers or audiences detect, notice, trace, or find a theme. Okay. You don't say Shakespeare uses the theme of appearance and reality or anything like that. 3. Audience. Iago does not try to win over the audience, okay? Shakespeare structures the play in a way which involves the audience because we get to see, through the soliloquies, the workings of Iago's mind. This is an effective dramatic device because as the tragedy unfolds, we feel more a part of it and therefore the emotional response at the end is greater. 4. Appearance versus reality. Try not to use this phrase ever in an essay or in any paragraph. Talk instead about the theme of deception or duplicity, or the prevalence of conflicting ideas about seeing and knowing, etc. Topic sentences. Probably the most important one here. Make a statement about the significance of the passage. Don't start a paragraph with empty statements like Iago continues his speech by saying, I hate them all, but say instead something like Iago's repetition of his earlier statement about hating Othello reinforces his evil determination to exact revenge. 6. Analysis. Avoid the temptation to translate a line. Make sure that you are actually analysing it or making some inference rather than just saying what it means in modern English. This last one can be a bit of a trap in Shakespeare, but you know, once you've written it, just go back and check what are you really saying about it. Okay, so those are my tips. Now I'd like you to pause the video and spend 15 minutes writing your paragraph. Done? Well done. Good. Okay, now sit back and listen and take notes. The last thing that we're going to do today is look at an article. Okay, this article is called Understanding Shakespeare's Iago. It's an article to help A-level students with Shakespeare's motiveness malignity. Iago is the very disturbing villain of Shakespeare's Othello. In Iago's case, the destruction he goes on to cause is not the scariest thing about him. The scariest thing really is the question the audience are left with all the way through is, why is he doing this? Described by critic A.C. Bradley as inexhaustible, this question is never going to be easy to answer, and may not even have an answer, no matter how many Iago gives to the audience. That said, there are ways that we can try to understand Iago, and understand how he spreads havoc in the play, contaminating Othello's love and then corrupting it into the maddening sexual jealousy. So you can pause the video just here to take notes on that little bit, or you can look at the presentation afterwards. Number 1. Iago, the malcontent. The malcontent is a type of character found frequently on the Elizabethan and Jacobean stage. Othello was written in 1603, the first year of King James's reign. As the name implies, what makes a malcontent is their dissatisfaction, usually with their social and political position in the world. Iago tells us that this is the reason he's after Othello at the beginning of the play, but we don't believe this for long. 2. Iago and Metatheatre. Iago the villain. Shakespeare's villain does not only seem to be dissatisfied with his social position, but his position in the world of the play too, the world created by Shakespeare. Through his soliloquies and asides, we feel like Iago is looking into the play with us, almost like a narrator, making scathing comments about characters. Shakespeare's character even says directly to us, "I play the villain." One of the interesting things that goes on in plays is that through the audience and the characters or actors share the same physical space. For example, the theatre hall. The characters usually aren't aware that the audience is there, unlike the audience who can see and hear the characters. But by acknowledging that he is in the play, Iago shatters the fourth wall, and we feel like we can get caught in his web of deception like all the other characters in the play. When a play refers to itself like this, it is called metatheatre. Iago the playwright. Iago's control over other characters like Othello and Roderigo suggests that rather than villain, Shakespeare sometimes presents him to be like the playwright himself. Like a playwright, Iago has control of other characters' language, most explicit in his corruption of Othello. Othello's language is renowned for being beautiful, written in the musical blank verse. Iago turns this into fractured grammar and utterances of hate later on, especially in Act 5. Othello goes from poetic descriptions of the hills whose heads touch heaven to the cliched curse of death and damnation, and that reverberates emptily in the alliteration. The climax of Iago's corruption of Othello happens in Othello's psychological breakdown. Noses, ears, and lips, an image of a mutilated body as well as mutilated ungrammatical language. Shakespeare even gives Iago the power to turn objects in the play, like Desdemona's handkerchief, into props for his own plot. In this play, Iago definitely controls the action. Iago delights in his manipulative web as a playwright does in his creation, but Iago twists the notion of creativity. His creation is utter destruction. Like most Shakespearean tragedies, there's a pretty big body count at the end. Iago and sexual jealousy. Iago is made even more disturbing by his overtly sexual imagery. His beast with two backs illustrates this point pretty strongly. This animalistic and plosive-heavy description demeans Othello on a racial basis, as well as horrifying Desdemona's father. Iago has the self-awareness that sexual jealousy is a poisonous mineral that gnaws my innards like a physical disease. You're probably not surprised, given what you know about Iago so far, to hear that he uses this as a weapon on other characters. This is again seen through Othello's language, calling Desdemona a sweet woman, then later on an impudent strumpet. Though the plosives and assonance linger, Desdemona's purity has been corrupted. Disturbingly, Iago never seems to say the words himself, only through others. And in a way, that's his art. In Act 1, Scene 1, the audience in Shakespeare's time may have seen Iago as a safeguard to Desdemona's sexual purity. Later on, we see that he creates her as nothing more than a sexual object to be traded for Roderigo's money and exploited for revenge. Iago and his motivations. First, it seems Iago's motive is rational, being professional jealousy, like most malcontents. As he tells Roderigo, preferment goes by letter and affection, is hurt by pride and his motivation. Then he parodies Othello's powerful status, despite being a Moor, in his Moorship. Yet another reason is lust, claiming Othello has leapt my seat. The problem with Iago might be that he gives the audience too many motives in his soliloquies, none of which hold true. This is an important point to note, as usually playwrights use soliloquies to reveal what characters are really thinking. Iago's multiplicity of motives does not clarify, it conceals. Even when we think we're getting in his head, we really aren't. And if we do find it, what is the scariest of all is not what is there, but what isn't. The problem of Iago is above all summarised in, I am not what I am, as if he is going to tell us his identity, and then negates it with no explanation. This happens again at the end of the play, where Iago says, you know what you know, refusing to speak. The similar construction shows the audience that in reality they've made no progress in understanding Iago. In his world, language and meaning do not connect. With no closure, Iago is disturbing long after the play has ended. Right, so that's all. So make sure with that article that I've just read for you that you go through, read it again in your own time, make some notes on it. So why is there no lesson tomorrow? I've been in discussion with Miss Miller, and we've decided that it makes more sense for us whilst we are in lockdown and won't be resuming normal lessons this semester, to space it a bit better so you can manage your workload. So we're going to go to 2 lessons a week. So every week there will be one on Wednesday and one on Friday. Okay. Lastly then, a little reminder, please submit your redraft of Tragic Settings essays tonight by midnight if you haven't already. Okay, well done and have a good day.